Welcome everyone to our virtual celebration of our Empower Ethnic Minority Role Models of 2020. Incredibly excited to be with you all today. Thank you for joining us all over the world. And we're here to celebrate role models. We're going to have a really fun conversation. At times it will be serious because it's a serious conversation about race in business as well. We were actually supposed to publish our role model list back in March, but this was just as the pandemic was hitting. So we actually rescheduled it to next month. And then given what's been happening in the last few weeks with the Black Lives Matter movement, we kind of felt we wanted to get some good news in the world. So we released our Empower role model list last week. And if I'm honest, it's nothing but good news because our role models are doing amazing things for race, both inside and outside the workplace. And we couldn't thank them enough for all the work that they do. For those of you that don't know, my name's Suki Sandhu and I'm the founder and CEO for Involve and Ordelis. Involve is an inclusion consulting firm and we help businesses with being inclusive. And Ordelis is an executive search firm that helps level the playing field for diverse talent. And I couldn't be more excited to be joined by our #1 executive globally, our #1 advocate globally, our #1 future leader. And we also have our #2 executive, although she is the #1 female ethnic minority executive globally. So she can have the #1 title today. So you'll always be our #1, can you? So we are really excited to be joined by them and they're going to share their insights and their views in this hour session. We've got you for the next 55 minutes. If you've not been to one of these sessions before, the way it's going to work, we want it to be as interactive as possible. So you can see on the screen below, there's a chat function and a Q&A function. In the Q&A function, please add any comments, any questions that you might have, and then I'm going to do my best to try and pose them to the panel throughout the conversation. And we want it to be a conversation, so feel free to say whatever you like, no holds barred, whatever you feel, but keep it clean. We are recording live, so we want to make sure that we can keep the recording, and we are excited to have you again. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to now hand over so they can all introduce themselves one by one. And what they're going to also add in their intro is what the response has been since they've been in the list, because I'm sure a lot of them are celebrities now if they weren't before. So I'm going to start off with Mary. So Mary, you go first.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm super excited to be part of this panel. Yeah, I think it's been really amazing. I mean, first of all, when I received the news of being #1 on the list, I was just shocked and amazed, but really proud because many of the people that I'm listed alongside, I'm a big admirer of their work as well. So it's been so amazing to have so many questions, so many clients, so many friends reach out to know more about the work that I'm doing and to read up. And really, I think the lists are really powerful to really celebrate the uncelebrated. A lot of people who do additional things outside of their day job because they're passionate, because they want to make change. So that's really been so great. So just as an introduction about myself, my name is Mary Abasamwa. I work at PwC as a management consultant within our financial services practice. So my passion is financial services and working with fintechs and banks, but I'm also super passionate about financial inclusion within financial services and supporting millennials to become who they truly want to be. And linked to all of that is making sure that people have the access to the right opportunities and resources to get into the workplace.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mary. Mauro, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you today. My name is Mauro Gregorio. I am the president for the Performance Materials and Coatings business at Dow, been at the company more than 30 years now. And during that period, I had a chance to interact a lot of people that care about inclusion, that care about diversity. So you asked about being part of the list. I think what impressed me the most is that doesn't matter if #1, #2, it was a list of 100. And 100 that you selected out of thousands. So just to see this energy that is around the issue now and the opportunity to make this world a better place gave me a lot of excitement. And just go through and reading each and every one of them. Everyone is doing so much. I don't know how you come to who comes first in this list, to be honest. And I learned a lot just by reading the list and also seeing the impact it has in the communities around us. You get the people that work with you, people that study with you, people that just don't know you and want to connect because you have a goal in common. So that was great. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and learn more from all of you.
Thank you, Mauro. And you're right, it does get harder year on year, but actually we do shed a tear or two when we are reading all the nominations, because it does give you hope when you see all the amazing work that people are taking. So you're right, you see the 100 in the list, but there are hundreds more that didn't make it, that are all still doing amazing things. So don't give up on applying and nominating, don't give up the work that you do.
And even seen in the company, we saw people from the CEO to the future leaders, everybody joining to the same cause. So that was I felt proud to be part of that day also.
Absolutely, because role models are at all levels in an organization. So, Kanye, let's come to you. Kanye, you're a mute. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Well, let's try that again. Hi, I'm Kanya King. I'm founder and CEO of the Mobile Organization, a music, media and entertainment company that's driven by culture, creativity, and community and cause. And basically the Mobile Organization was set up to kind of challenge the status quo and provide a unique showcase for creative talent to shine when others were not doing that. And really, Mobo has always had a social and cultural responsibility beyond the parameters of music. And being in the business of kind of celebrating and championing and supporting others, to actually be recognized myself is kind of really humbling. So it was a complete surprise. And obviously, for it to have been chosen and selected by people who you look up to and you admire, and you've watched their work, and you know, I just feel very kind of blessed. So I don't think anyone does the work they're doing to kind of be recognized or celebrated, but it's always very nice and humbling to be kind of appreciated. So thank you for inviting me here today.
You are more than welcome. And I think you also said you were going to invite us to the Mobos next year.
Yes, exactly. If you're good to me.
Did you all hear that? I'm sure I heard that. I'm sure I did.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kanya. So David, over to you.
Well, thanks for having me. And it is humbling. And I was surprised to be at the top of the list because there's so many great folks. My team did all the work and nominated me without my knowing it. So I would say inside the company, there's been a great celebration. There are thousands of people in Nielsen doing this work. And I think they felt this validating for them. I just create the air cover for them to do good work. I also think it's been useful externally. My LinkedIn profile or LinkedIn post got a lot of attention. And right after you announced it in America, CNBC, the business television network, booked me on Juneteenth to talk about being a CEO and a chief diversity officer. So
that's great.
I was glad to see and share the news a little more broadly, which has led to a lot of CEOs talking to me about this move and what they might do.
Well, we need to definitely make sure we get that link because I haven't seen that. So I'm sure my team will be finding it right now and share it on the chat. Thank you all for joining us. So let's start with the conversation. We've got loads of different points to get through. Why don't we start? I'd love to know, actually, you're all role models in your own right, but who have your role models been in your career? Like, how did they support you? And if you can share who specifically, just to make it more real. So Kanya, let's come to you first.
I think when you think of role models, a lot of people think of high profile people or individuals who are well known. But to me, my role models, my biggest role models have always been my parents. My father and mother came to this country around the age of 18. My father came from Ghana and my mother came from Ireland. And they came here to this country at a time when there was kind of notices on windows that said no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. And my mother married a black man and then was ostracized, by her family. And she then went to live in Kilburn, a very predominantly Irish area, and had 9 children. And you can imagine trying to bring up 9 children as effectively a single parent, because my father died when I was young. So here was this incredible, strong lady who bore 9 children, tried to do the best she can, and kind of struggle day in, day out to kind of keep a roof over our heads, as well as try to kind of help to kind of elevate us in our lives. And to me, she's always been my biggest role model because growing up in a kind of a council flat, a very humble kind of background, sharing a room with about 5 other siblings. My mother just spent her whole life working in caring professions. She was a kind of like a home help. Then she was a nurse. And even though there were so many of us in our household, I'd sometimes wake up, the next morning, and she'd taken in a homeless person and she'd just give them a place to sleep. And she was always so kind of community minded. And it was just unbelievable. So she's always been a phenomenal role model to me. And throughout my life, she used to say to me, she wanted me to be a teacher, and I failed in that aspect. That's another story. But she always used to try and kind of encourage me. And when I wanted to set my own business up, she was very worried because I remortgaged my house, and she was worried that I would lose my home. But what is really amazing about her was, having tried to convince me not to take that many kind of risks, she ended up setting her own business up at the age of 70. And it's so that was kind of wonderfully rewarding. So a phenomenal woman, and always has been my biggest role model.
Did you say a business up at 70? Did you say 70?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You don't have to be young.
I know you don't. You absolutely don't. Yeah. That's proving it right there. Fantastic. David, let's come to you. Who have your role models been or role model that you could speak of?
There are several, but let me talk about Sandra Sims-Williams, who you had on last week. So 23 years ago, I came to take over a little company called Bronner Schlossberg Humphrey. Sandra was there. She ran recruiting for the creative department, and made herself known to me about 20 minutes after I got there. And I talked to her about diverse recruiting then, and she said, "Don't bother. They're not going to stay." And let me tell you why they're not going to stay. So let's make it that people want to stay, and then we'll recruit. Yeah. And she just put it out there for me and laid the facts bare. And had a lot of frustration around what we now call microaggressions. We didn't have the word for it then.
Yeah.
But what I was impressed with as a role model is she turned that sort of anger and frustration into positive change. She developed herself. She went off to the Center for Creative Leadership. She came back with a plan. I gave her the air cover to do it, but really changed the culture. That company was ultimately sold to a big global French company. She went on to run diversity for all of them at Publicis. And when I had the chance to bring her back into my life 22 years later, I was glad to do it.
Fantastic. And she is brilliant. We all love. I actually VC'd with her yesterday. She's brilliant. Mary, let's come to you. Who's your role model and who supported you in your career?
I think I would echo a lot of what Kanya said, actually, that I think role models exist in everyday people. There's a lot of people that I've seen that maybe I haven't worked with directly, but have appeared on lists such as these that are really inspiring. I know that before I was really involved in a lot of this work, I always used to read lists like these and just search about people, look at their LinkedIn profiles, and try and find future mentors and sponsors, because I think it's really inspiring to see lists like these and see people's journeys kind of mapped out and read about their backgrounds as well. So I think for me, I can't name anyone really in particular, but except for maybe Michelle Obama. But otherwise, I think it's lists like these and on a daily basis, looking around at the people I work with and seeing the values that they demonstrate that I also hold dearly, such as honesty or determination or a desire to change the world. And I think, I like spotting that in people and trying to make sure that I'm emanating that as well.
And Mary, remember, you are our #1 future leader. I will keep reminding you of it because I feel like you still don't believe it, and I need you to own it and use the platform to do even more amazing things in the world.
Thank you.
Well done to you. There's lots of people looking up to you as well. Mara, let's come to you.
Yeah, after listening to this, I think Kenya's mom is my role model now. Starting a business at 70. I'll start working on my business plan right now, and I'll claim that she was my role model. No, that's great. You hear all these stories. There are many for sure. I was fortunate to work in a company that always valued diversity and inclusion. So I had many mentors and many people to look up and say, I can do that one day. That was very powerful. If I was to name one, that would be Karen Carter. She's also on the list of this year. And Karen, we fight because she says I'm her role model. She's my role model because we keep learning from each other. We work together a lot. and everything she has done. And when she accepted the role to be the Chief Inclusion Officer of Dow, she had one of the most wanted business roles at Dow at that moment. And she was doing phenomenal at that time. But then this calling came for her, we need a Chief Inclusion Officer and it's you. And we talked briefly about she accepted the job, and she took as a mission, and she's changing the world. She's changing the way business thinks about inclusion, the things we are doing, how we are responding to the current events, and she's in front of the issue. She's helping us, and we are learning from her. So in this inclusion environment, we couldn't have a better leader, and she's my role model when it comes to inclusion for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, like you say, she's in the executive list with you, and then you also had your CEO Jim Fitterling in the advocates list alongside David. So also doing great things for the community. A lot of people are probably watching this now thinking, how do I get into the list? So what I thought would be really helpful to inspire people to take action, and we want people to take action after they log off today, is for you all to share just a little bit, because I'm conscious of time, so I will be keeping you concise, around the kind of interventions that you've been implementing around race, both inside and outside the workplace, to help you, that helped you get into the list to begin with. So Mary, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of what I do, so from a workplace perspective, I currently co-chair our Multicultural Business Network, which is one of the 11 people networks we have at PwC in the UK, and really is all about celebrating the multiculturalism of our UK firm. We have people from over 120 different nationalities, and we also know that being kind of culturally aware is a skill set that we want kind of our employees who travel and work across the world to have. So I absolutely love running the network. We've been able to do amazing things, such as start a Colour Brave campaign within the workplace.
Brilliant.
Since 2016, which is all about kind of talking about race in the workplace and recognizing that we have to have the discussion. And I think that's been an amazing campaign to be a part of and to champion and to lead. We've also been really bold as well about the way we have conversations about diversity and inclusion, having like a Black History Month event where we use virtual and augmented reality to showcase Black British role models. So we've been really bold in our ambitions, and I have a great team and it's so amazing. Also PwC, we've been reporting our ethnicity pay gap voluntarily since 2016 as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of all of that activity. And then
so I'm going to stop you there, Mary, but ladies and gentlemen, you can see why she's the #1 future leader. So take notes and start taking action. David, let's come to you. What are the kind of things you've been doing? You're on mute. So you're not alone.
No, so you can mute us centrally, but we have to unmute ourselves locally. So you muted me for me. Anyway, I would say, let me highlight two things. One, internally, the reason I took the title was for accountability. Nielsen measures things every day. We measure market share ratings. This is something we can measure. You can measure what impact you're having. Yeah. And just the same way we measure our financial results, our board can look at our measurements every quarter, just as they look at our financial results, and we can look at them internally. And I think you can't make improvement without measurement and accountability. So we did that. And then as you do that and you are measuring society, I think the other thing is to speak up on injustices. So this year we filed 2 amicus briefs with the Supreme Court of the United States. The first was to make the case that adding a question about citizenship would have people not fill out the census, and therefore it was wrong. And 5-4, the decision was there, and I was pleased to be mentioned in the final ruling from Justice Roberts. And then we also filed on behalf of our Dreamers. I've got 36 wonderful DACA Dreamers at Nielsen in the United States. And again, I was really pleased that the court saw the logic of making sure that these Dreamers stayed here. So I think using our position publicly when it makes sense to really fight injustice, using data is the second thing we do.
Now, everyone at home is thinking, how on earth am I going to change a federal law to get into the list? You don't have to go to that extent, but I mean, that shows you how amazing that intervention actually was. So well done, David. Mara, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's more trying to find opportunities to drive opportunity parity, that people, everyone from all races, all genders, everything can have access to the best they can ever be. So all of us play a role in that in society, and there are many ways of doing that. I think I think education is the passport to social advancement. So I tend to spend time, my charity time, my thinking time at work with that. So there are opportunities to go and teach at a school for a day. When I was living in Houston, Spanish background, some kids don't speak English well. So they see someone that looks like them, thinks like them, and can make incorporate environment is a role model that will help someone to move. Sometimes it's just being in front of authorities to develop regulation that help us, like things that are happening now that we need more attention. But I think as good as we are, I think we still need a lot to learn and a lot to do. So if the question is what I can do to get there, there is a lot to be done. Educate yourself, speak up, make it happen. So lots of opportunities, as we know, that we are not there yet.
Thank you, Mauro. Kenny, what about you? What kind of things have you been implementing or doing?
Yeah, I mean, the Mobo platform, I guess, is an all-round agenda-setting brand that has successfully championed diversity and inclusion in music and broader cultural arenas. And I think a drive to deliver social and cultural change has always been embedded in the organisation's DNA. So the number of things we do are everything from, we have fellowships and apprenticeships. So we have a partnership with London Theatre Consortium, helping to support mid-level executives to go on and run buildings, theatre schools. We have a partnership with Help Musicians, a Mobile Help Musician Fund that provides kind of money, business support and well-being, well-being offering in order to kind of help creative talent who come from disadvantaged backgrounds to be able to dare to dream. And many artists who we've supported over the years have gone on to have kind of global success and generate millions of pounds to the economy. And I think one of the things that Mobile has been doing for a very, very long time, since, nearly more than 25 years, I guess is calling out injustices and racism. I mean, only recently, I wrote a very personal, heartfelt letter an open letter to the culture minister, DCMS.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Talking about kind of racism in the music industry, the gaps in representation for Black talent, Black individuals, the representation on boards and working with Black companies. And I think sometimes you have to have the courage to speak your truth, even if you're not part of a large conglomerate. I think now more than ever, it's a watershed moment in our time. And for us, we've been fighting for such a long time to kind of change the diversity in music and media and across the board, because how Black people feel about themselves, representation is so important, and it impacts how we feel about ourselves in our daily lives. And that's something we felt was really, really important to change, because the creative industry sector is the fastest growing sector in the UK economy, and yet it's not a level playing field. And so that is why we have created so many different talent development programs and offerings in order to kind of change the game, really.
Fantastic, well done. David, I'm going to come to you, because as our number one advocate, we think allyship is really important in trying to drive change in business, because as we both know, both sides of the pond, the individuals that sit in the positions of power and influence at the top in leadership team, C-suite or the board are still largely straight white men. So what do allies or advocates need to do to really help in this agenda?
Back to measurement, I think you've got to be clear and purposeful that every single position that gets filled needs a diverse slate. I'm pleased to have gender equality on my direct reports. I'm pleased to have 3 Black leaders who report directly to me. Okay. I'm very displeased with several levels down. And so I think you've got to, this is not soft, this is hard. You have to measure it, and you have to really look at every decision and ask yourself, did you make the right decision? And there's room for everybody here, but you really got to make sure this is front and center in the decisions you make every day and the way you lead the company.
Well, as you say, what gets measured gets done. And I think with executives, if you set them a target, usually they want to smash it. So I don't know why it is any different when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
And it's a target, not a quota, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, there is, absolutely. Mauro, I'm going to come to you as our number one executive. What can advocates do to support ethnic minority talent in business?
Well, I think there are several things that can be done. At our company, that we call the ACT that we're working on. There are three things. One is advocacy. The other one is community. The third one is talent. And advocacy is internally and externally. Just to give an idea, we create a social justice forum internally. So they advocate, they represent the African-American community, all the communities for social justice inside the company. So it's beyond you picking up the phone and complaining to a hotline. It's a place for debate and to make things better. We are giving pay leave for people to go vote so they can vote for the right candidate that can make the change that is necessary. We make Martin Luther King Day a paid holiday for people to take the time for inclusion, for anything that can help society to move forward. As you talk about communities, it goes with what are our procurement programs? Are we really paying attention to buy for those companies from minority that are owned by minorities? So if we make that community stronger, you make businesses stronger, it's good for everyone. We do that internally also. And from the last one that is talent, is providing education, is providing training opportunities so people can ascend and they can get there. And we're training every leader to understand the subtleties around racism and inclusion, so everybody can be a better leader. At the same time, you need to train people so they can continue to grow and get there. And we do this to our communities also. We have a fund that is managed by our African American, now we call it African Descendant Network. They help us decide where those funds go to help education across the globe. Used to be only the United States, now we're bringing that fund even more aggressively globally. So it's just providing all of that to provide that parity to opportunity so everyone can get to the same point at the same time and let the best win. So it's a lot to be done, but this ACT is driving everything we do: advocacy, community, and talent.
And ACT, as you say, spells it out perfectly. Yep. Less words, more action.
Correct.
Now, we know with what's happening both sides of the pond, particularly around the Black Lives Matter movement, people protesting in the streets, it's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster over the last few weeks. And what I would really like to do, Kanya, Mary, this is for you two, is we'd love to know like how the last few weeks been for you personally when you're seeing what's happening around you, but also in the news and social media. Mary, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I definitely think the past few weeks have been probably some of the most challenging weeks of my career so far. I think, I think firstly it was the pandemic and kind of the disproportionate impact that was having on people from particularly, Black and Asian backgrounds. But I know that from a Black perspective, Black people in the UK were 4 times more likely to die with having contracted the virus. So close to home in the workplace, I was already hearing kind of those stories of grief. And then when this movement happened, I think the key word I would use to describe it is that feeling of feeling quite heavy, that you have to explain things that you've known are a reality for quite a while. So I think the past few weeks have been tough for many of us that identify as Black. Additionally, having to kind of stand behind these feelings of professionalism and trying to work out whether you can talk about these kind of things in the workplace. But from a PwC perspective and from a network perspective, we really just wanted to encourage the discussion and to provide the safe spaces and the forums for people to talk about things, whilst also recognizing that people are tired emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually as well. Thank you, Mary. Kanya, how's it been for you?
Yeah, I think I can honestly say I've had every emotion you can imagine. From sadness to kind of shock and anger about all the activities that have been happening, to what happened with George Floyd, to the protests. But ultimately, I've ended up feeling a lot of kind of strength and hope, really, because the whole Black Lives Matter movement has galvanized so many companies to kind of reflect, to connect with Black communities and support the movement. And I've never seen this in my lifetime, really. I've never seen so many people coming together and wanting to be educated, even looking to kind of unlearn some of the information they have, wanting to kind of understand Black history and being more comfortable talking about race. You know, when I started the Mobile organization and started talking about inequality in 1996, you know, we were ostracized because it wasn't a thing you did at the time. Social media wasn't the kind of evolution it is today, the revolution. But, you know, now what I'm seeing is there's a kind of a solidarity, there's a, you know, coming together and new approaches, which I think can only sort of foster sort of meaningful change. And so, you know, for me, it's been great to see people wanting to kind of talk about the kind of industry barriers. People have kind of shared so many kind of heartbreaking kind of stories that, you know, people want to listen to, and people want to see how can we deal with the kind of structural and systemic racism and everyday prejudice that a lot of us face in our workplace. So for me, yes, ultimately I've found myself having kind of inner strength and hope, and really seeing that today, I think there's going to be change, and I just want to ensure that it's not a moment in time, but it's long, sustainable change that my son and his children will benefit from in years to come.
And we were behind you every step of the way. We mentioned there being this Chief Diversity Officer panel we did just over a week ago. And one thing that really resonated with me was actually Sandra Sims-Williams, who is David's SVP for Diversity and Inclusion. She said one thing that she's noticed as a Black woman is that she talked about people consciously caring. And what she meant by that was she's never had her white friends ever call her just to check, is she okay? Because of what's been happening and what's been seeing. And Erica Irish Brown, who's the Chief Diversity Officer for Goldman Sachs, when she did her intro and she was talking about the fear she has for her 3 boys when they leave her home, I mean, she had us all pretty much in tears. It was really, really emotional. And I think what I've learned over the last few weeks is that every non-Black person needs to use their privilege to lift the Black community up. Like, we all have to do better. And that's both sides of the pond. Because I get frustrated here in the UK when people say, oh, it's a US problem. And that really frustrates me, because it's like they want to deny the existence of racism. And I think when it comes to race, it is incredibly uncomfortable. There's a great quote we had from another event previously: afflict the comfortable, comfort the afflicted. And I do feel we need more of that now more than ever. So is there, in terms of how do we invite others into this conversation? Like, because it is so uncomfortable, what do you think are the steps that we need to do that? Mauro, did you want to go first on this?
Well, I think we made an important move already, that more people are not feeling uncomfortable about dealing with the issue because it's in front of all of us. So we had that physical version of it, that is somebody suffocating the other one. So that happens every day in economy and society. People that go to school, they cannot find a job. So you see that around you all the time. So I think everybody is there. So there are a few things to do. I think number one is to educate ourselves. All of us, as good as we think we are, that we know the issue, what it is. Every time you talk, this week I spent a lot of time with the Black community. I would join one of our network events, and I learned a lot about how they feel that it didn't cross my mind before, and I became more sensitive to it. I think there is this education piece that you all need to get on board and do more. Evaluate your actions. When you see something, do something. And maybe you're doing something that is not as positive as you think it is. It's time to recorrect, and people see that behavior. Everybody will emulate, and will try to go along with you. Speak up, evaluate what you do, and make sure you are making it happen. So people say, why is that person doing that? I'm doing that all the time. When I see my colleagues at work, in the community, everywhere, can I also do that? And bring people, have those conversations. I think somebody already made a comment, as someone pick it up the phone and ask me how you're doing. If you do this, 3 or 4 people continue to do that more and more, and it can catch fire. We had a session this morning also, and we had the benefit of having Cinque Marshall come talk to us. She's the CEO of Dallas Mavericks, and she's a tremendous advocate for inclusion, and you know her very well. And she was saying that one hope she has is because her son went to one event about the inclusion of African descendants, and she said her son was the only one from African descendants. So the people want to do it, people want to work on it. So let's stay on it, let's make it visible, let's keep it in front of, and let's make sure this is not the last time we are having a webcast or a discussion like this every week. That needs to continue to be in front of people as people start to forget what it was. but we need to keep being in front of everyone. But in the solution space, we need to move on from arguing too much about what it is and move on and build on the great things we have and do it better.
Absolutely. Well, Mauro, fundamentally, racism is not up for debate.
No.
Period. Mary, is there anything that you'd add? Oh, you're on mute.
I think so. I've just done it again as well. I think I wouldn't add more to what Mauro said. I think, yeah, having the conversation, providing the safe space, but recognizing this isn't the complete beginning, but there's a long way to go as well.
What do we say? What about, I'm sure you're all just as frustrated as me when you see people say all lives matter, which obviously usually comes from a white man or white person. How do we bring them up? How do we bring them up? How do we engage them? Because I mean, I normally have to keep my mouth shut because I'm normally probably going to say something offensive. So Kanya, why don't we start with you? Like, how do you respond to someone that says all lives matter?
I mean, I think it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of what Black Lives Matter movement is working for and fighting against. I mean, you know, it's not that lives of white people don't matter, it's that Black lives should matter as much. And I think, you know, it's really pointing that out. It's about highlighting the specific problem. It's about working for equality for everyone. You know, white lives, you know, it's not just, you know, it's about highlighting kind of basically specific problems, really. And, you know, that's important.
David, what would you say?
Yeah, so in America, Nielsen works with the Advertising Council. And we actually came up with a campaign. The slogan is, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's been very useful to lead to the right discussion. You know, we have to confront a history of slavery. We have to confront systemic racism from the beginning of the creation of the United States of America. It's an original sin and it needs to be confronted. And I think this has been useful to, you know, of course, every life matters, but right now, Black Lives Matter. And until they matter really legally with law enforcement, you can't say that all lives matter.
Agreed. We've actually had a question come in from Dave Allman. And what he's asked is, David, it kind of refers to your question around what gets measured gets done around targets. But what should the consequences be if they don't hit their target?
Oh, you mean, well, listen,
for like your leaders in your business, like you're setting targets for diversity,
well,
but they're not hitting them.
First, it affects their compensation. So you know, I think it affects bonuses. It's when I make recommendations to our compensation committee, this is one of the factors. It affects my bonus. So therefore, I'm going to make sure it affects everyone else's. I think secondly, it affects who you promote. When you entrust people to leadership, you entrust people to hit all the targets, the financial targets, the customer targets, and the inclusion targets.
Yeah, no, great, fantastic. I wanted to talk, because obviously we're talking about Black Lives Matter and the Black community. And as Kenny, you were kind of alluding to earlier, it's that the house that's on fire right now is the Black community, hence why Black Lives Matter. But what I've also seen is all Black Lives Matter. And what that means is including the intersections of the Black community when it comes to LGBT, trans, etc. And as we all know, this month is Pride Month. Do you like my prop? So how do we make sure that from an intersectional perspective, because I mean, I feel like you can never have enough rainbows in your life, I personally think, but how do we consciously ensure that we include the marginalized communities? Because as we all know, the Black trans woman is the most marginalized community in the world. So I can see Mary nodding furiously, so I'm gonna let her go first.
I think it's really about intersectionality, as you've alluded to there. I think it's recognizing that I'm Black and I'm a woman as well, so there's kind of other aspects to my identity. But even within that, recognizing that no one is a monolith, that when you create these groupings of Black or BAME, everyone's experiences aren't going to be the same, and being willing to have the conversation about that. I know from a PwC perspective, we've even looked at the term BAME and said, actually, we know that the B within the BAME is disproportionately affected and isn't rising as well within our organization. So we're looking more at that data as well. So I think it's recognizing it, having the conversation, and as a network chair, I'm making sure that I'm collaborating with our SHINE, which is our LGBT network, and our Dawn network regularly as well, our disability and ability network.
Fantastic.
So having those kind of intersectional conversations.
Yeah, great, thank you. Mauro, I mean, Jim Fitterling, he's one of the 3 openly LGBT CEOs in the Fortune 500. Mm-hmm. What's been happening to try and build bridges across those communities, LGBT and people of color?
Yeah, I think Alliance has been a great thing. The Alliance, everybody can see that, they can see the value, can help. I think in our GLAD network, 80% are not LGBTQ+, they just support the movement. So I think we're trying to build around that one. Obviously having the CEO that is openly gay is helping us to deliver the message and show that you can get there. But he couldn't be more humble about it. He makes sure that people need to continue to help. We are not there yet. And we are bringing that model to we have 10 networks in the company. We're bringing that model to all the 10 networks. And one thing we did right after the Floyd date happened was to ask everyone, if you haven't yet, join the African Descendant Network, just to show your support and participate and be together with that. So I think this will help a lot. And listen, human race is a mosaic. There is only one race, it's human race.
Yes, exactly.
And all the colors need to be in that mosaic. They need to be in that picture. If you're looking at a picture that is missing a piece, it's not as beautiful as it was before. So you need everyone. And that's where we are. You need to see the beauty of it, the beauty of all the colors, the beauty of all shades of it, to enjoy life to the full extent. So we need to get humanity there. It's a shame where we are. It's a matter of decency to bring it back to where it should be.
Agreed. David, and I've seen the Nielsen logo now with the rainbow flag. What's your perspective on intersectionality?
Well, listen, our 2 most pervasive groups worldwide in 105 countries are Pride and Women Win. And so, you know, we've actually looked to the Pride group to make sure they're bringing everyone in. All around the world. And this morning I started with some leaders from Latin America, India, and Europe, really focused on this globally. And I think that, you know, the folks in these groups want to help each other. But for us, having Pride really own the racial diversity of their group has been a great way to bring people in.
I think it's also, I have to say, it's also highlighted some of the issues within Intersectionality, both ways actually, because on the Pride panel, we discussed a tweet that went viral in the US where a gay white man was basically saying to the blacks to not colonize Pride Month because they have Black History Month. And you don't need Juneteenth, for instance, from the gay community. So it kind of raised the issue around that intersectionality and the homophobia that might exist in the people of color community and the racism that exists within the LGBT community. And I get frustrated that minorities are fighting with minorities when we need to be more together. So Kanya, I don't know if you've got anything to say about that. I can't hear you, mute. There we go.
Yeah, I was going to say social injustice groups need to work together, need to collaborate, share best practices, because ultimately equality can only be achieved if everyone in all sections of society are heard and given equal rights. So that's what I would add. It's just so important to kind of galvanize and support each other and come together.
I would also say, I take a lot of energy from younger people. You know, we had these enormous protests around Black Lives Matter in America. Young people did that. And I would say generationally, every generation is a little more open. And so and a lot of our LGBT community went and marched in the protests. And I would also just say it's really important as a leader that you're listening to the people in their 20s coming into the company. They're the ones who are going to show us the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to actually talk about language for a second, because we've heard different terms for ethnicity throughout the conversation. We've heard African descendant, we've heard Black, Asian, and minority ethnic, people of color. What do we think to these labels? Like, do they work? Like, can we say Black? Can we say brown? Like, what are individuals' thoughts on labels? Kanya, do you have an opinion?
I mean, I think labels have evolved over the years. You know, there's been so many labels, even as a mixed race person, you know, from half caste, there's been a lot of different terminology that was acceptable years ago that's no longer acceptable now. To me, it's all about the intention, really, in terms of how that label is used. I mean, personally, of course, you know, when I started the MOBO organization, and the name MOBO sounds of music of Black origin, that caused a lot of kind of noise. People were very shocked that we'd be so blatant with the term, and it upset a lot of people. But that was their actual point, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to have a conversation about race. So I do understand a lot of the kind of sentiments out there that sometimes other terms are used to kind of exclude Black people, you know. And we have, like, there's been a conversation going on in the music industry about the term urban. And so a lot of record labels have got away with that term because, you know, they just want to call it what it is, you know, Black music instead of urban music. And so, I
think it's interesting that you said the term half caste, because actually a lot of our younger viewers probably won't even know what that means. Because I remember that when I was younger, that being used, and how it evolved into mixed race, because that was inappropriate to use that term. So sorry, Mary, did you have anything to say? Because I felt like you were nodding then as well.
I'm just agreeing with everything. But I do agree. I think the terminology is changing. But I also think there's another side of the coin where it's about the individual as well and what they want to accept. And I think most people that I know that are Black are comfortable with other people using the word Black as well. So when someone is Black, just say it. I think sometimes that's been a hurdle in the workplace around getting people comfortable using that terminology. And the second thing I would say is also from a data perspective, sometimes only collecting data at the Black level is not enough of a critical mass. So you have to kind of find other groupings and use terms like BAME and other terminology as well.
Agreed. We had a good question from Rosalind Mutongewa. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What key elements would you recommend to be included in organizations' compulsory ethnicity, diversity, and inclusion training, to make sure that it's not seen as simply a tick box exercise? Who'd like to go? Mauro, let's go for you first. I can see that you were itching to answer that.
Yeah, no, I think we are learning how to do it. I think you need to bring the people from the different communities, the different parts, to help teach each other. I don't know if there is a package that you take from the shelf. Here's a training of being trained. Training, I think, is leaving the problem with the people that are suffering the issue and learning with them how to make it better. I think the comment Mary just made, I learned last week also, it's okay to call me Black. Somebody told me that. You need to cross those bridges, and you have the critical mass now to do it. So I think that is a great place to start. And I think the comment that David meant also, the younger generation, they're so much better equipped to deal with all of this. Let the people from the bottom of the organization, people that are coming out, help us navigate through this, rather than trying to come, check the box, you've been trained, but you're still not hiring people, you're still not doing what to do. So we're doing the things, for the panels when we interview, we want a diverse panel now, interviewing the candidates. Not only have a diverse pool of candidates, but the interviewers are also diverse. So you bring different views when you make those choices. So this is a little bit part of training, because you learn as you do it. You're starting to see different angles that you didn't see before. So it's not a check the box, it's not a 1 week deal, it's a journey to be trained, to be better educated, and that includes all of us.
Yeah. David, anything to add on the training front? Any specific core things that you think are important there?
I think what's important is the training be conversational, because you are all learning from each other. I have to say, one of the upsides of the pandemic and the quarantine is that we've been doing more discussions this way, in groups we use Google Meet with 24 squares up there. They're all equal size. There's no hierarchy. Yeah. We're all in our homes. We all bring our kids and our dogs and whatever. to the discussion, and it's allowed young people and old people and experienced people and new people to just share. So I think we've got to learn from this when we are all together again, making sure this is a conversation around people and not titles and levels is really important.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, research has shown that not many emerging Black employees had the same access to contacts, kind of networks or prospects required to successfully elevate their kind of career progression. And I think guidance, as we know, guidance and advice for a senior figure, whether from a mentor, can make the difference between an employee getting to the next level in their career or not. So I think, you know, the initiatives, the mentorship programs, the skill development, they're kind of fundamental really, and creating kind of strong employee networks. You know, that is fundamental for people from Black backgrounds to help them progress and further, you know, develop their careers.
Well, actually, we only have 5 minutes left. So what I'd love to end with from each of you is to share what you think we can do to empower, see what I did there, everyone that's actually watching right now to take one action after they log off from this session in their workplace. So I'm going to start with Mauro. Let's start with you.
I think it boils down to having those courageous conversations as we talk. We need to talk about it. We don't know exactly how to fix it. We all want to do it. So it's a courageous conversation, asking and making the changes. I think we heard some of those in the call today. You hear more about people's compensation being tied to this and training and everything. So it's many things at the same time, but it's asking each other. We are all suffering from it. Let's help to get to the better place.
Yeah, great. Mary, would you like to go next?
Yeah, but I think I would echo a lot of the same sentiment that Mauro just mentioned. I think my message would be, firstly, to Black people, you more than matter. Yes, we are at a critical time, but you more than matter, and you need to own your skills and your kind of be bold in the workplace, because some of the conversations I've had with people, yeah, it does affect you mentally and the way you kind of own your take up space within your workplace. And yes, I think there's power in the micro actions that people can take, whether it's inviting their colleagues to events like this or sharing the list with their colleagues and just having the small discussions, because you just need small changes in people's mentalities to create like a wider movement.
Absolutely. David, did you want to go next?
So I believe if you have power, you need to give it to someone who needs a little more. Absolutely. And the best way to start that, when you ask somebody how they're doing, mean it, and then listen to the answer.
Listen and be heard, I think, absolutely. Kanye, what about you? What do you have to say to empower people at home to take action?
First of all, I would say that we need economic empowerment. So they should be signing the petition to introduce mandatory ethnicity pay gap reporting. Yeah. So much like the kind of mandatory requirement for employees with 250 or more for the gender pay gap, we need to call upon the government to introduce the ethnicity pay gap reporting, because really we need to shine that light on race, ethnicity-based inequality in the workplace, so that this can be addressed not tomorrow but today. And I think currently there's a kind of a lack of data available, yeah. And in order to close that gap, this is what we need to do. We need to publish that. We need to publish it.
We actually started a mandate almost 2 years ago about encouraging companies to voluntarily report the ethnicity pay gap reporting. We've got about 15 companies to sign up, so they can already do that. We have a best practice guide around it too.
Brilliant.
I mean, I just saw a little message from someone called Oriel Stevens saying they wish it could have been a 2-hour conversation, but unfortunately, Oriel, we can't do that because we have to keep your attention for at least 60 minutes. But this has been recorded, so you'll be able to replay it at some point when we send the link out. There were some incredible takeaways here. I love, Mary, what you said about power in the micro actions, which I think is really true in being bold. I love the sentiment around what gets measured gets done and data, David. And the beauty of a human mosaic. I think that was brilliant. And I think it's true. It's about human inclusion. It's Pride Month. We have Black History Month, Black Lives Matter. We need to all be together. I wish I could give you a huge round of applause, but we're in a virtual session, so I'm going to try and clap for you so people can hear my applause at least. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We're going to have a key learning document with all the actions, and we'll email it around afterwards. This link will be open and shared for everyone to disseminate across their organizations. But thank you to everyone at home for joining us. A huge thank you to our panelists, and hopefully see you again soon. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.